Well, it's my great privilege to be able to introduce to you tonight three extraordinary women. Wait a minute, I'm supposed to push this thing and turn it green. Okay. All of them icons, of course, of the judiciary. All of them role models to men and women alike. But most of all, and most importantly for us here tonight, they truly are their sister's keeper. So I'm going to give brief introductions of each of them based on various things that I've dug up about them and a little personal experience. Let me start with Chief Judge Claudia Wilken, famous for her generous mentorship of generations of women. Yes, of women law students and lawyers. Claudia is, of course, a federal judge who insists that no one rise when she takes the bench. But as the New York Times put it, she leaves little doubt about who is in charge. None other than Tony Serra, who most of you are familiar with, of course, has said that Judge Wilken is a fine example of a fine combination of intellect and empathy. Adding, of course, that he certainly doesn't have that opinion of most judges. We know. A former litigator in civil actions, state public defender, and former U.S. magistrate judge, Judge Wilken was appointed by Bill Clinton in 1993 to the U.S. District Court for the Northern District and has served as that court's chief judge since 2012. Her years as a judge have been characterized by a number of highly controversial cases, including, and this is my personal favorite because my husband actually was involved in this case, a case involving FBI malfeasance in connection with a bomb that was planted in the car of and critically wounded Earth First's Judy Berry and Daryl Cherney, a case that was tried, as one newspaper put it, before a motley crowd of environmental activists. And during which Judge Wilken apparently allowed Daryl Cherney, a challenge under all circumstances, to strap on his guitar and serenade jurors in order to prove a legal point. Other of her cases have variously included her invalidation of lifetime term limits in the California legislature, which unfortunately was reversed and unwisely on appeal. Her holding that federal offshore drilling leases are subject to the authority of the California Coastal Commission. Her refusal to throw out the charges against a landlord that was ultimately found guilty of importing young girls from India for sex slavery and slave labor. And her holding that LGBT employees can sue insurance companies for coverage of their spouses and partners. Though hardly regarded really as a sports fanatic, Judge Wilken's perhaps most controversial recent decision was in the O'Bannon case, in which she rocked the sports world by holding to be an antitrust violation the NCAA rules forbidding college athletes from earning money for the use of their name and image in video games and TV. She did, of course, later admit that prior to the case, SEC, in her mind, most definitely did not stand for Southeastern Conference. Ultimately, the East Bay Express summed up Judge Wilken's jurisprudence as follows. In her courtroom, they said, the law reigns supreme. But we all know that both inside and outside her courtroom, extending a helping hand to women and people of color and others marginalized in this society, and coming up after her is really what reigns supreme. So, moving on, Justice Joan Dempsey Klein was a legend in her time 40 years ago. Then already a revered Los Angeles judge, she co-founded California Women Lawyers and very shortly after that, the National Association of Women Judges. When asked why she kept founding these organizations, she characteristically replied, "A single voice is not worth much." In fact, she subsequently testified on behalf of NAWJ, and I like to feel all women and men, before the Senate Judiciary Committee in support of the nomination of Sandra Day O'Connor to the United States Supreme Court. That's why they, of course, confirmed her. First in practice as a Deputy Attorney General, then appointed to the LA Muni Court, thereafter elected to the LA Superior Court, and finally in 1978 appointed as presiding justice of District 3 of the 2nd Appellate Division of the California Court of Appeal. Repeat after me. All right. Joan today serves as senior presiding justice of the statewide Court of Appeal. And how fitting it is that as such, she sits with Attorney General Kamala Harris and this woman right here, our Chief Justice, on the Judicial Appointments Commission. So we have an all-women commission for the first time in our history. A proud fifth-generation Californian and descendant of San Jose's founding Bernal family, champion at beach volleyball, and a champion swimmer, including, picture this, at synchronized swimming. Recipient of the Wilken Award and others way too numerous to mention, as she recently said, if I'd known I was going to get all this attention for getting older, I'd have done it sooner. Variously described as smart, witty, fearless, wise, a blend of toughness and sensitivity, and my personal favorite, a legend of jurisprudence, Joan is the author of thousands of legal opinions, including a 1964 holding that employers are strictly liable for their supervisors' sexual harassment under the Fair Employment and Housing Act. Joan's timeless spirit calls to mind the equally timeless lines of the Rolling Stones in Ruby Tuesday. There's no time to lose, I heard her say. Catch your dreams before they slip away. And her recent decision, alas, to retire at age 90 also calls to mind that song's timeless refrain. So goodbye, Ruby Tuesday. Who could hang a name on you? When you change with every new day, gee, we're going to miss you. Joan Dempsey. And last, but hardly least, I've always sort of wanted to be, a hoofer. Having served for over 20 years on California's trial and appellate courts, Chief Justice Tani Cantil-Sakauye was sworn into office, I won't fall off, I don't think, as California's 28th Chief Justice on January 3rd, 2011. The first person of color, the first Filipina, and the second woman ever to serve as California's Chief Justice in our history. And in just 4 short years, she has earned the profound respect and admiration of all those who seek to achieve equal justice in the largest judicial system in the nation and the millions of Californians they serve. Moving right along, you see, without a podium, you're just dead in the water. Okay. Born the child of first-generation Asian American parents, former farm workers who met at a Sacramento soda fountain, and following a brief career as a Reno blackjack dealer, more on that later, upon graduation from law school, our Chief Justice was deemed too young-looking to be hired by the Sacramento Public Defender, something I think they've probably come to regret, whereupon she opted for the District Attorney's Office. Subsequently rising rapidly as Governor Duke Majan's Deputy Legal Affairs Secretary and then Deputy Legislative Secretary, our Chief Justice was appointed in 1990 to the Sacramento Muni Court, taking her place as the youngest judge in the history of California. This was, of course, a distinction that ultimately time cured. But I think it's safe to say that our chief is a woman who, like her two sisters in law tonight, has most emphatically leaned into, as Sheryl Sandberg would say, a professional life that has embraced just about the biggest career challenges one could possibly imagine, as well as a rich and treasured personal life. And while she was reportedly shy and struggled to find her voice as a child, our Chief Justice has long since become an extraordinarily forceful, often lyrical speaker, author of brilliant judicial decisions, a nationally lauded, indefatigable advocate for civic engagement and civic media literacy, and a passionate voice for the seminal importance of diversity and equality in the legal profession, on the bench, and in the greater society. So contrary to what the benighted editors of Time magazine, I mean, who even knew it was still in print, any kind of like U.S. News and World Report. Anyhow, contrary to what these hapless Time magazine guys might say, I look at Chief Justice Tani Cantil-Sakauye and at her sister panelists, at ERA and at everybody in this room, male and female alike. And I say, just like we did at all those rallies of years gone by, this is what a feminist looks like. And moderating this ungovernable trio of stars is ERA's own supernova, whatever that may be, Noreen Farrell, our non-Farrell executive director, who is truly, as one was said once of Jackie Kennedy, the ne plus ultra of je ne sais quoi.
Thank you, Drew. That gives me a license to do a lot of things tonight, so I appreciate that. Well, it's so wonderful to be here, and thank you so much for being here. And I want to thank Judge Wilken again from moving from the RSVP list to the hot seat. And I want to let you know that Judge Patel really wanted to be here, and she especially wanted me to make sure that I said in front of everyone how much Justice Klein meant to her and means to her. And she referred to you as the mother to all of us. So the impetus for this event is obvious to some of you in this room, but maybe not to all of you. It is, as Gada mentioned, our 40th anniversary, and it's also the 50th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And I think that birthdays are as good a time as any to take stock and get a sense of where we've been, where we're going, what we need to do. And, you know, obviously, ERA was founded to promote gender equality, and it was founded by lawyers, and one of whom went on to become a Superior Court judge. I don't think that Judge Nancy Davis is here. Is she? Oh, there she is. And I want to recognize her. And also her partner, Donna Hitchens. Judge Hitchens is here as well. There are so many people here to recognize, and I realize that it's 5:50, so I'm going to move on. But thank you all for being here. We're really so honored to see so many great people in the room. And so my organization decided this was a great moment for us to take stock. We've written a report about the obstacles still facing women in so many industries, and it seemed fitting that we spend tonight focusing on women in law and really talking to the top women in law. The women who have really inspired us, our Chief Justices. And so given the time, I've looked at my big old outline and I said, you know what, I was going to throw a couple softballs, little warm-ups. I'm not going to really do that. I hope you don't mind. Because I just want to jump to the question that I think about a lot and know a lot of us do. And Judge Wilken, I'm going to ask for your reaction first. This will be the only question I ask for you. Reaction first. I know you're sensitive about having to go, but I think it's really the $64,000 question. Or I don't even know what that translates in terms of inflation, because I think that show was in 1958, right? And so the question is, does diversity on the bench and in women's leadership really matter? Does it really matter aside from sort of notions of fairness? And if so, why and to what end and how? And is it relevant just for the edges of some cases that impact women and people of color? And to frame our discussion, I want to draw a focus on two different views taken by Sandra Day O'Connor, of course, the first woman to serve on the U.S. Supreme Court. She's often quoted as saying that a wise female judge will come to the same conclusion as a wise male judge. But she really also spoke very, very eloquently about the influence of Chief Justice Marshall on the court, not only in terms of how his life experience influenced his own application of the law, but how he influenced his colleagues. and how his influenced their perception of certain cases. And then, of course, Justice Ginsburg and Justice Sotomayor have been much more upfront about their views in terms of why diversity matters. And Judge Wilken, I'd love to get your response to that and what's been your experience in terms of why it matters, if it matters, and how it matters.
Well, I think it totally matters. I have to turn this.